If a dream keeps repeating over and over, maybe it's not a dream at all. Ethan couldn't remember exactly when he first dreamed of that place. Maybe it was a few months ago, maybe longer. But what made him shiver was the feeling that it had always been there, like a memory from a long lost time, just now rising to the surface. In the dream, he always walked along a narrow gravel path, flanked by sparse pine trees. The sky was always grey, veiled in a thin mist, like a winter breath. The wind blew softly, yet echoed like whispers behind his back. Ethan never turned around. He didn't dare. At the end of the path was a small, old-fashioned town. The houses had pointed roofs and faded paint, silent as if abandoned for a century. In the town's center stood a grey house on a hill with a warped wooden door, a leaning white fence, and a bare old maple tree. He never entered the house in his dream. He would just stand there, like an uninvited guest, and there was always a little girl standing beside him, holding his hand. But he never saw her face clearly. Every time he tried to turn and look, the dream would blur, then fade. Only the cold, tiny hand and the invisible gaze remained burned in his memory. Ethan woke up each morning with a sense of loss, his heart racing, his back drenched in sweat, and a single question echoing in his mind. Why do I remember it so clearly? At first, he thought it was just a random dream, maybe caused by work stress. But when it repeated, the second time, the third, the 10th, and each time with new details, a door slightly ajar, a faint melody of old music, a strange painting on the wall, Ethan started to worry. He looked up the phenomenon of repeating dreams online. Some said they were memories from a past life. Others blamed it on subconscious suggestion. A few even claimed that dreams were gateways to parallel realities. Ethan didn't believe in such things. Not until one evening, while browsing the internet to kill time, he stumbled upon a photo in an old news article. Asheville Town Fire, 1954, unanswered questions remain. He held his breath. The photo showed a house burned down to its frame, with charred wooden beams and a half-destroyed white fence. But it was the house from his dream, no doubt about it. Ethan couldn't sleep that night. He sat in front of his computer, reading everything he could about Asheville, a remote place over 300 kilometers from the city. Hardly anyone mentioned it anymore. The article was just an archived piece from a local magazine, briefly describing a house fire that claimed lives. Identities unknown. A tightness squeezed Ethan's chest. He didn't know why he was trembling, only that every image in the article matched exactly what he had seen in his dreams. How could he dream of a place he'd never been? How did he know there was an old record player in that house, a crooked painting on the wall, and piano music drifting from the second floor? Ethan stood up and stared into the mirror. His face was pale, but his eyes burned with something close to a trance. He knew he had to go. He had to find out what was hiding in those dreams. Ethan packed his things, took a week off from work, and booked a bus ticket to Asheville. The night before he left, he dreamed of the town again. But this time, the little girl holding his hand turned to him and whispered something. For the first time, he heard her voice. The road to Asheville twisted like a tangled thread. The GPS on Ethan's phone kept losing signal. The bus driver just shook his head when Ethan asked about the town. Ashvale? That place burned down a long time ago. There's nothing left. I'm not sure you should go there. Ethan simply gave a faint smile, his eyes fixed on the window. Fog blanketed both sides of the road. The towering treetops seemed to bow and whisper to one another. The farther they drove, the more disturbingly familiar it all felt. "This is the path from my dream," he murmured. At a remote stop, the bus came to a halt. "This is as far as we go. You'll have to walk the rest of the way." Ethan stepped off the bus, backpack slung over his shoulder, gripping the printed map in his hand. But strangely, Ashvale wasn't marked on the map at all. Just a blank, empty region. There was no turning back. He walked into the forest, following the gravel path he had seen so many times in his dreams. Every step echoed through the silence like a memory long buried. A cold wind slipped beneath his collar, carrying the scent of ashes. And then he saw it. Ashvale. The town stood before him just as it had in his dreams, except now. Everything was scorched, broken, and coated in grey dust. The house on the hill still stood, but only as a blackened skeleton of charred wood. The white fence had crumbled. The burr maple tree looked like an old hand reaching toward the sky, begging for help. Ethan couldn't tell if he was still dreaming or truly standing there, but the sensations were too vivid. The stench of smoke, the bite of the wind, the deathly stillness. He stepped into the house. Inside, most of it had collapsed. Yet traces remained. A scorched record player, a crooked picture frame, and a staircase broken in two. Every detail matched his dreams exactly. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. He sat on the floor and pulled out his phone, scrolling through the old article. His eyes stopped at a name. Police discovered the body of a girl named Lila in the basement of the burned house. Lila. A sharp pain stabbed his head, like a memory dragged from the bottom of his mind. For a split second, he saw himself holding the little girl's hand in the dream, hearing her voice. "Ethan, did you forget me?" He screamed as the whole house seemed to spin. The space distorted, as if the dream were melting into reality. Ethan ran to the second floor. Through the thick dust, he saw a cracked mirror hanging on the wall. He looked into it, but the reflection wasn't his. In the mirror was a boy around 10 years old, messy hair, wide, frightened eyes, and behind him, a girl was crying, blood streaming from her forehead. They were standing in this same house, but it was still whole, untouched by fire. Ethan reached out and touched the mirror. The image vanished. He collapsed to the floor, panicked. A memory. Not a dream, a memory. That night, Ethan stayed in the ruined house. He set up a makeshift tent in the living room. The sky outside was starless. Wind howled through the shattered windows. And again, he dreamed. This time the dream was clearer than ever. He was a child, living in this very house with his family. His parents argued. There was fire. There was smoke. He and his little sister, Lila, ran to the basement to hide. But he was terrified. He ran away, leaving her behind. He woke in the middle of the night, tears streaming down his face, though he didn't know why. But one thing he remembered vividly. He had lived here before. Ethan looked once more at the scorched photo in the article. In the dim light, he noticed a detail he hadn't seen before. In the picture, a small boy was standing far in the background, facing away from the camera. It was him. Ethan sat motionless on the bed, the faint blue glow from the digital clock casting a tense light on his face. The hour hand had just slipped past 2:47 a.m., the exact time as in every dream before. He felt something waiting for him in the basement. No longer a vague fear, but a tangible pull, like a rope tightening around his neck, dragging him down. His feet were cold as he stepped onto each wooden stair. Every step creaked, like the sound of bones being crushed. The air was thick with mold, mixed with something sweet and old, the scent of long dead flesh. The basement door opened. The darkness thickened, almost like it was made of something physical, heavy and suffocating. Ethan switched on his flashlight. The dim beam swept across decaying walls, rotting beams, charred children's toys, and a small mirror placed in the center of the room. No one had ever mentioned this mirror. Not the former owners, nor the investigation reports, not even in the dreams. Ethan stepped closer. He bent down, looked into the mirror. The mirror didn't reflect him. It showed a little boy sitting on the floor, clutching a torn, blood-stained teddy bear. Half of his face was burned, but his eyes, they were still open, pitch black, with no whites. Ethan couldn't breathe. His hands shook violently. The boy looked up at him through the mirror. There were no words, only that gaze, digging into Ethan's chest like a dull blade twisting slowly. Suddenly, the flashlight went out. The entire basement was swallowed by dense darkness. He didn't dare move. Only the pounding of his heart echoed like war drums in a sacrificial ritual. Then, a faint, shuffling sound. Ethan quickly turned on his phone's flashlight. The beam swept across. In the corner, a little girl was standing with her back to him. Her hair touched her shoulders and she wore a filthy white dress like she had just crawled out from underground. In her hand, she held a teddy bear, the same one from the mirror. Ethan stifled a scream. The girl walked toward the mirror, but her reflection didn't appear. Only the boy remained, sitting in the mirror, his eyes following her every move. Ethan stepped back. The floor beneath him split, a soft but echoing sound in the stillness of a morgue. The girl turned around. She had no face, just a blank void, dark as pitch, like someone had erased her from existence. But Ethan could still feel her gaze, like invisible claws clutching at his throat. No speech, no movement, just standing there, watching him through the hollow void. A wave of dizziness crashed over Ethan, like all the blood was being drained from his body. Images flashed through his mind. A child running out of a burning house. A little girl trapped in the basement, tiny hands pounding against a wooden door. A scream choked by flames. A hand reaching out, then swallowed by darkness. Ethan collapsed, hands hitting the ground. He gasped for air like a fish out of water. The wall to his left shed flakes of paint, revealing ancient plaster beneath. His heart was about to explode. He looked back at the mirror. This time, there was no boy, no girl. Just an empty room reflected, the very basement he was standing in. But something was wrong. In the mirror, on the wall, there was a photo of a family. A father, mother, a young boy, and his little sister. Their faces were joyful, and the boy was Ethan. He staggered to his feet, breathing hard. His mind cracked like a shattered mirror. His name used to be Elliot. This house belonged to the Hollister family, burned down in 1954. He was the only child who survived, but had left his sister behind in the burning basement. Ethan broke down in tears, not out of fear, but guilt, the kind that rots the soul. A soft cracking sound rang out. The mirror splintered, Then another crack, and then it shattered completely. Shards flew everywhere, yet none cut him. On the ground, only one shard remained intact, reflecting the little girl with the teddy bear, smiling softly before fading into the air. Ethan left the town. No one believed him, and he didn't need them to. But he began to seek others, those who spoke of recurring dreams, especially of places they had never been. There were patterns, familiar faces, burned houses, dark basements, people who were left behind. From Ethan's final journal entry, we don't dream of those places again by accident. We dream because we were there, because we once loved, because we once failed. Souls don't die. They just wait for us to remember who they used to be. The boy's name was Julian, 6 years old, living in a small coastal town on the western shore of the United States. No one understood why he was so afraid of the sound of the bell, especially when it rang at 2:47 a.m. Julian often woke in the middle of the night, cold sweat soaking his hair, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. His mother once said, "You talk in your sleep, in a voice that isn't yours, like a trembling adult trying to speak." No one believed her, except Julian. He drew. With the shaky strokes of a child's pencil, he sketched rotting wooden stairs, a basement door slightly ajar, and a red glow, like fire slowly licking away the past. One autumn day during art class, Julian's teacher asked, "Who are you drawing in this picture?" Julian looked up, his voice flat. "It's my little sister. But I left her behind." No one understood. The teacher gave a dismissive chuckle, but Julian was certain. That night, as his mother tucked him into bed, she noticed him pulling out a small wooden box hidden beneath his pillow. Inside was an old scrap of paper, aged and fragile. On it, scribbled in shaky ink, was a single line: "I won't run anymore." Outside, a bell tolled from the church tower. 2:47 a.m.